another one. As a intermission notice,
Yes.
during the presentation, your cameras will be viewable by some people. So if you don't want people watching you eat or snack or pick your nose or whatever during the presentation, you can turn your camera off and not worry about what we're seeing.
Oh, you're talking about me eating a pretzel, huh, John?
Well, if the salt cracks, no. And also, if you don't have your mic turned off during the presentation, it will be better for the presentation.
Okay, you just heard all that while I was recording, so go ahead.
Okay, so today's going to be a little different. I asked that all of you go ahead and mute yourselves now, except for Ray. We want Ray to talk to us. That way, if there's any background noise, dogs barking or whatever, we will not hear it, and it won't be in the recording. So we have a guest speaker today, and it's going to be a bit different because Ray is having internet issues. We almost didn't get him today, but his brilliant mind came up with this MiFi hotspot idea, and we did some testing yesterday, and it's going to be him and I switching back and forth between screen sharing. The videos did not play very well over the cellular connection, so he's going to do the presentation on his side, unshare, then I'll share the hopefully I have him queued up, the video is ready to go. So it'll be a little disjointed from normal, but I'll tell you what, I've seen this presentation, it's fantastic. So I'll let Ray tell you a little bit about himself. He's got an incredible history that he can tell you all about as part of the presentation. So it's all you, sir.
All right, thank you so much, Kenneth. As Kenneth mentioned, we've been talking the last several days because I usually have Suddenlink as my internet provider, as well as television, and Thursday it went out. And I spent an hour or so with the tech people on the phone. They couldn't do anything. They said, "Don't worry, Mr. Baxter, we're going to send a tech right over." I said, "Good, when will we be here?" They said, a week later, next Thursday. So between my wife working from home and all the things I'm doing via Zoom these days, as everybody else is, we had to figure out something. Kenneth gets most of the credit. He really came up with a lot of these ideas as well. But I'm using a Verizon, what they call MiFi system, which is basically allowing me to tether onto my cellular connection. And I went from 100 megabytes per second to about 7 on a download speed. I didn't realize the Verizon or the cellular phones with such slow speeds. But anyway, let's go on, and I'm going to share my screen. And Kenneth, I'm going to ask you to give me the ability to do that. Thank
Sorry,
you.
we had to get out of the meeting and back in, so I forgot it got turned off.
No problem. I'm going to leave the optimized screen sharing off this time because we realized that it really had an issue with let's see if I can move this one over. Okay. All right. How technology has changed the way we listen to music. Let me go back a second. I was really interested. I'm glad I got the chance to hear some of the workings of your club. Until about 3 years ago. And I was the president, and the VP, the secretary, and the treasurer all came to me on the same day telling me they didn't want to run again. And so we've actually changed our club to a meetup club. So we don't have any more offices. And now with Zoom, we don't have to worry about paying rent for a place to have our meetings. And that's actually worked for us pretty well. All right, so how technology has changed. Let me give you a little background information about myself. So from a music point of view, if my accent hasn't given me away yet, I'm originally from New York. I love to tell people that I never had an accent until the day I arrived in Arizona. Then all of a sudden I have an accent. Anyway, as a youngster at the birth of rock and roll, I started my record buying, probably about age 10 or 11. In 1979, I moved from New York to Southern California and helped start an operation there. We called ourselves the Doo-Wop Society of Southern California. And that was around for about 14 years, every year doing 4 quarterly stage shows, primarily featuring the vocal groups of the 50s and early 60s. So if some of you folks have seen on television shows like PBS. They had Doo-Wop 50, Doo-Wop 51, a couple of others. We were doing the same kind of thing in the 90s. There's an organization in Southern California, in Phoenix, Arizona, called ourselves RCA. RCA, not the record label, but it stands for Record Collectors of Arizona. And they used to meet bi-weekly, and believe it or not, they'd bring in their 45 RPM records or CDs. We'd sit around in the large room and discuss the early days of rock and roll as the music was playing. I enjoyed that group so much, I helped start a one that's a local music listening club where I live. I'm about 100 miles from Phoenix. I'm north in the mountains where about 5,500 feet elevation. So I don't get nearly the heat that my friends down in Phoenix do. But anyway, I like that meeting in Phoenix so much, I started another club up here. And this one, we just cover all kinds of popular music from the last 70 years, be it country, be it rock, folk, etc. On the technology side, I am a director and treasurer of APCUG, and then I'm still the president of we call ourselves now the Payson Meetup Club in Arizona. And then I was teaching at the campus of Eastern Arizona College here, 3 computer-related courses. But with COVID-19, I told the dean I'm not going to be teaching this semester. And you know what? Now that I'm officially retired, I might not go back. All right, now I mentioned the couple of those 2 in-person meetings that we were having. Well, COVID-19 stopped that. And that really bothered me because I really enjoyed those get-togethers. So I wasn't going to let something like a global pandemic stop me. So I organized both these clubs and we resume our meetings using Zoom. And I have a pro account and I host the meetings, and those attending, like you've done in your meetings, you will share the screen and either play a video that's maybe on your computer, or a YouTube video, or some audio selections that are on your computer. And we just have as good a time as if we were meeting in person. So that web address I have up there, and I'll show it again at the end if anybody's interested. That's an 18-minute video explaining in detail how the process works for those of you that might want to start something similar as far as a music listening club in your own area. I think I know most of you, I've seen some of your names, but there's something called the Tech for Seniors broadcast every Monday morning at noon Eastern time. Ron Brown and Huey Poplock are 2 names, and Bob G, of course, who's really well known to the APCUG family for his vast security presentations. They do a session every Monday morning for an hour on Tech for Seniors, a whole range of topics. The meeting ID is on this slide. I've highlighted or bolded it. No password required. You'll be put in a waiting room and then admitted. They've added me to this group now, and I usually do a song at the end, a YouTube video at the end, closing out our session. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. Knowing that John Kennedy is with you guys, I'm sure he's mentioned that already. All right, music is forever. This is a quote from Paul Simon. Music should grow and mature with you, following you right on up until you die. I'm sure that's a true statement for the great majority of people, but for me, I'm still kind of back in I've never progressed too much. I do know a lot about other kinds of music, but my main focus has always been the music of my youth and the vocal groups. So here's a trivia question, talking about Paul Simon, Simon and Garfunkel. And I'm not going to ask you to call it out, but think in your own mind. Can anybody tell me the name this duo used in 1957? Yes, before they were Simon and Garfunkel, this duo was known as Tom and Jerry. There's a copy of my original 45 on Big Records, came out in late 1957 and actually reached number 49 on the pop charts. Both Art Garfunkel and Paul Simon, they had known each other from their early days in elementary school in Queens, New York. And while there were follow-up songs, Artie Gar was the name that Garfunkel used, and Jerry Landis used was the name Paul Simon used. But these teenage boys really had no further success in the 50s, and they probably thought that was the end of their music careers.
Papa Lucha Bop, you're mine. Say, woo, Papa Lucha Bop, you're mine. Hey, schoolgirl in the second row. The teacher's looking over, so I gotta whisper way down low. You say, woo, Papa Lucha Bop, let's meet at the school after
A little play of that and what that sounded like. So I'm going to break this presentation into really two parts. The first part will be reviewing our music listening habits for about the last 70 plus years, starting with the Victrola that played 78 RPM records and going all the way up to the compact disc. And we'll see how many of you remember these, and maybe you even still have some of these locked away and tucked away in a closet or an attic. And then we'll look at today's download and streaming offerings and music clouds, owning versus renting music, all the choices that are available. All right, so now I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask Ken to play video 1. Well, hello there, folks. Since this presentation is titled How Technology Has Changed the Way We Listen to Music over the years, over about the last 70 years, I thought I'd show you that I actually have some of the different devices we used in that time frame. So we can start with the 78 RPM record. And here's my collection that I probably started collecting in 1956 and 57. Of course, I made a spreadsheet so I can know where the different records are. We then moved on to 45 RPM records, and I keep them there. And then, of course, the long play album over here is what most of us, probably many of you may still have. And then we moved into CDs. And the amount of CDs that we have here, this is my collection, and then my wife has her own collection over here. And then now we're into MP3s. I have many of them on my computer, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then some of the equipment we used over the years would include, of course, the turntable. This is a unique turntable, in fact, that I can put a disc on here, and I may demonstrate that. Press a number, and then it'll automatically go and count the number of spaces between the tracks. And then if I press number 4, it would drop down automatically on the 4th track without me having to search for it. Before we started making copies of CDs on the computer, we actually had devices like this, where you could put the original in here and a blank over here, close them up, and then this would automatically make, let's give that a little help, would automatically make a copy of the disc. The old VHS player, this is one that'll actually convert it to a DVD. And then I talked a little bit about the computer. We're getting good at this. All right. Let's see. Okay. All right, so let's start with the phonograph. Believe it or not, that was invented by Thomas Edison back in 1877. And after several years, they developed the 78 RPM record. And really, if you consider just the first half of the 20th century, that was the first time that consumers could choose what they wanted to listen to at home. So the 78 RPM format was available, but it really almost immediately it was a need for improvement. The records were made out of shellac, so therefore they could easily chip or shatter. And due to the weight of the early tone arms on the early players, the recording grooves and thus the sound quality would deteriorate pretty quickly. Now let's see if any of you remember this. Some consumers would add to this problem by taping a coin to the tone arm to help reduce the skipping. Sound familiar? All right, video 2. Was around for probably the first 50 years or longer of the last century, and this was the media that people played in their homes so they could actually listen to the music of their choice. A lot of people, most folks listened to the radio, but they had little choice in what they were going to hear there as far as specifics. So here's, to me, is probably the breakthrough rock and roll vocal group song, and this is what changed for America music, not only for teenagers, but by teenagers. So this is the original Why Do Fools Fall in Love by Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. The record came out in 1956. We all know what year it is now. Let's see how this plays. So this particular device I picked up 10 years ago, so it plays at 78 RPM speed, but when they mail it to you, they only give you the stylus or the needle that will play a vinyl record. And what plays vinyl versus what plays at 78 RPM are very different. So I immediately went and changed the needle. So this is a 78 RPM needle. So not so bad for a record that's more than 60 years old. Still plays, and all of them in this box here will play as well. Trying to make it advance here. Give me a second. Was around for finally. Okay. Ever wonder why we call LP records albums? Well, it started really when they started putting classical music on 78s, and since the 78 could only hold maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes at the most per side, how would they do an hour-long symphony? Well, they would put an hour-long symphony on maybe 10 different 78s and put all those records into what they called an album, which was bound together, something resembling a photo album. So the usage of the word album, I'm really intrigued that with respect to the sound recordings today, people will still say, if they went in to buy a musical CD, they said, I just bought an album, or even a download. So this is what the old 78 RPM record albums looked like. And they even called it a record album. I don't want to forget about the radio, because many people who couldn't afford them. So, but everybody could pretty much afford a radio. And after the initial cost, the music was free. Radio made available all types of music for all kinds of listeners. So we all remember, those of us old enough, that before the 1960s, America was a pretty segregated country. And but when you broadcast a song over the radio, anybody could listen to it. It all depended as to where you stopped on the tuning dial. So in a small way, radio helped equalize the social classes, because both poor and rich could hear the great vocalists. White listeners could listen to black music without fear of violating any of the current day social norms. And particularly in the mid-50s in large urban cities, there were many a young white teenager with a transistor radio tucked under the pillow in the wee hours, listening to the transition of black R&B into early rock and roll. Just ask me. Okay, records become vinyl. And we talk about format wars with beta and VHS, and even more recently with Blu-ray and HD. Well, format wars have been around for a long time. So it was 1948 that Columbia Broadcasting came up and introduced the LP long playing record. They obviously, this was a necessary improvement over the decades old 78 RPM format. And at the time, Columbia and RCA Victor were arch rivals with respect to issuing records. So what are some of the benefits of the LP over the 78? Of course, greater sound fidelity, it weighed less, it was far less breakable, and you could have so many more songs on each side. So that was 1948. Before I get to what happened in 49, something I discovered as I was doing my record collecting over the years, that earlier the LP actually were 10 inches in diameter, and was only 3 or 4 years after the LP first came out that they started issuing them as 12-inch size, which is what we're all used to, so they could accommodate more songs. But then in 1949, RCA Victor, having to compete with Columbia, came out with a little disc with the big hole in the middle, the 45 RPM record. And they needed to compete from a quality point of view and a quality sound. And RCA Victor had the record players, so they would be selling them at cost to entice buyers. And then the benefits of the 45 over the LP, because they were about 3 minutes each side. This was perfect for the pop and hillbilly songs of the day. And this was perfect to replace the 78s that were in the nation's jukeboxes. How many of you still have your 45s? A special type of 45 was the EP, standing for extended play. And that's where you had 2 songs on each side. And what's interesting today, when a new artist is trying to break in the music business, but they don't have enough recorded songs to do a full album, they will release as a download maybe 4 to 6 songs. And what do they call that? They call that their EP. So I love that when these older terms have stayed around decade after decade. So early rock and roll helped make the EP 45 popular because you had a total of 4 songs on a disc, not just 2. And they typically came in a cardboard picture sleeve similar to the LP. These picture sleeves today are worth a lot more than the actual records are. Here's one of them showing Elvis's EP, and Elvis today comes in 2nd place as the top-selling solo artist of all time in any genre in the U.S. He was recently overtaken by Garth Brooks. But both Elvis and Garth are behind the Beatles, who are still the top-selling of all artists all time. How many can relate to this? This is how we made a playlist. Just stack the 45s. All right, no, this one let's see if this one works. I think it will. The 8-track tape was the next format that we had. And this was invented by Bill Lear in 1965 for his line of private jets. He finished with it, he said, you know what, this might work in cars. And the players were initially manufactured by a Ford Motor Company affiliate, thus making the name Motor Victrola into Motorola Corporation.
Mine was classic. You're wrong. No, you are. No, you are. Okay, next up, fans who not offered to get.
Try the Super C22 formula free for 2 weeks. Help you get to sleep faster, stay asleep longer.
That's how it is. GINS.
Come on, people now. Come on, you brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right. Hey, I think the mamas and the papas and the trips on Central in L.A. They got a good thing going when the words go forever back. sweet that when she smiled, the stars rose in the sky. Always too much nothing, nobody should love.
Looking at the size of that 8-track tape, it makes me remember back then we thought, boy, this is great. Look how small this is to bring my music with me. All right, then came along the compact cassette. And really the cassette came out before the 8-track, 1963. But I can even remember working in the banking industry that we used these for dictation purposes. We had to do a letter, we dictated into the machine that had a cassette. So it was good for that, but not really for music because of the poor sound quality. But then by the early 70s, the Dolby tape noise reduction system by the Dolby Corporation was created. And the ability to record what we called hi-fi back then made the compact cassette a serious format for recorded music. And talk about staying power. It continued when we were able to buy home recording decks, and as consumers, we could create our own mixtapes. And continuing improvements in the quality and the noise reduction systems. Actually, the cassette was still a popular format at the beginning of the 21st century. This led to the Sony Walkman, 1979, and they sold over 200 million units during its time. That was considered a compact size. And I can remember walking around and seeing people in parks, jogging with one of these Walkman, strapped to their arm. Sony's lead here helped the cassette tape outsell vinyl records for the first time in 1983. And the popularity of the Walkman stayed on for another 10 years. With the introduction of the compact disc, the cassette format began to fade, although the Walkman name stayed relevant for many years. So music portability before the iPod was the Sony Walkman. Now let me just talk a little bit about cassette tapes. If you have old cassette tapes, and let's face it, even if you're not using them, the tape is deteriorating every day. And if all they have on it is the music of the day, then I just discard the cassette tapes, and if you really like that music, buy something in a newer format. But let's say these cassette tapes hold priceless information. Let's say it's the voice of a loved one who's since departed, or maybe an interview that you were on the radio or something, and it's really one of a kind. You want to capture it. Well, this is the type of cassette deck, small little portable. It's available on Amazon for about $25. And this side of it looks just like in the upper photos here, just like a regular cassette deck. You put the tape in, and over here you have your play button, and you stop and fast forward and rewind. But if you flip it over, on the back of it, it has the ability to make this cassette into an MP3. And you plug a flash drive into the unit, and as you're playing the cassette in real time, it's recording it as an MP3 on that flash drive. And here's a little larger model that looks like a small boombox. This one does the same thing, plus it has the ability to handle an SD card as well, if that's your preferred way. So these are the ways you can preserve what's on cassette tapes. All right, the compact disc. Sony and Philips were involved in the 1970s in researching and developing what today we still call optical disc technology. Now, as I recall it, the first commercial CDs that came out were expensive. When I'm saying expensive, I'm thinking about $25 to $35, and it was just all classical music. But it didn't take long for the pop music to come in. Billy Joel's 52nd Street in 1982 was the first pop album. And within the next year, almost all the older songs were coming out and being re-released that were LPs, and are now being re-released as compact discs and being sold on a mass level. 1985, Dire Straits became the first artist to sell 1 million CDs. Philips and Sony, still working together, created the CDR, which was the recordable CD disc in 1990, and how many of us use that to create our own homemade CDs. But in 2008, that sales for the large label CDs began to drop, and that year they dropped 20% because now with the new way people were consuming music was through downloads. While still a popular format, CD sales have continued to decline each year since. In fact, many new cars today no longer even offer a compact disc player. So let me ask you the question, do you copy your CDs to your computer? We call it ripping, and the main reason for ripping a CD to your computer is to back it up. So once it's backed up and you have a CD copy, you can put that in the car while keeping the original safe at home. You can make what's called a data disc. When you're making a disc using, say, Windows Media Player or any of the other formats like that, you have the choice of either making a audio disc, which is an exact copy of the CD, or a data disc, which means you can store hundreds of songs on that one disc. So that way you can take along one disc, because almost all the newer cars will play a data disc instead of dozens of CDs in their cases. To me, the reason I have all my music on a computer is for the ability to organize my collection. And I can quickly find songs by title, artist, album name. I have about 3 terabytes of storage on my one computer laptop that I use just for music. And that has all my audios and videos. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more later about MusicBee. That's my preferred music software since Microsoft has stopped providing updates for the Windows Media Player. And once your CDs are on your computer, you can download them to a smartphone. And you can play this through your car either by Bluetooth or with a direct wired connection. So it's worth the effort to copy your CDs if you haven't done that yet. Here's a bit of information most people I don't think realize. How does a computer know what songs are on a music CD? Let's think about it. Music CDs were introduced to the public before the PC became standard in the home. So for many of the older CDs in circulation, the data for the song title and the artist are not on the actual disc. So when you insert a CD in a computer, the metadata is automatically retrieved within seconds from an online database by comparing the number of tracks and their individual times. The chances of 2 different CDs having the same length of time are pretty remote, but it can happen. So there are several online music databases that different devices use, and Gracenote is probably the most popular. Now, more recent CDs do have the artist and track information encoded into the CD, so this can be read by CD players primarily used in the car. So sometimes you'll put a CD in your car and you'll see the song's title and artist, and other times you'll put the CD in and it'll just say track 1, track 2. That's because it's an older CD that didn't have the music stored on it when it was first created. And now normally home CDs players cannot read this CD text, but if you put it in a DVD player, that normally can read everything, or a Blu-ray player. Yeah, guess how long it took to rip all these? But I did it. All right, number 3. So we're all familiar with compact discs. Here's one of my wife's favorites from an Oklahoma native, Garth Brooks. This is actually 8 full CDs in one box set. Everything you could possibly want to hear about from Garth Brooks. But did you know that on the commercial level, for a while, we were not inundated, but gave them the opportunity to buy 3-inch CDs. This one is from Japan, where they were very popular, the Righteous Brothers, and they only had 4 songs on each 3-inch CD typically. The Japanese live in smaller residences than we do in America, so they needed to have something that wouldn't take up quite as much space. And then Rhino Records put out a whole bunch of these 3-inch CDs back in probably the 90s, and they never really caught on. But I like them. I like the idea of having this kind of media, so these are what the 3-inch CDs looked like. All right, the iPod leads the way to the popularity of portable music players. First by Apple in October of 2000, and basically it's an iPhone without the phone. Apple iTunes and other similar software gave the ability for us to actually put not only songs, but photos, videos, and other data on these portable devices. The advent of compressing music files allowed consumers to create large libraries without using up the enormous amounts of what used to be precious storage space. MP3. What is an MP3? Well, it's an audio compression subset of the Moving Pictures Expert Group family of standards. So this is a standard that was used in the motion picture industry. And basically it compresses to roughly 10% the size of an original recording without so-called without noticeable loss of sound quality. So if you have a song on a compact disc and it's 50 megabyte in size, if you convert that to an MP3, it might only be 5 megabytes in size. And the process eliminates what's called the very high end and the very low end, which they say the human ear really cannot hear. But ask an audiophile and they will pretty much disregard the MP3 and instead opt for what they like to call lossless recordings that have the full sound fidelity. What was the impact of the MP3? Well, portable MP3 players, which could hold thousands of songs, were very popular for a while until this feature was added to smartphones. And then I mentioned this briefly before, data music discs created at home with hundreds of MP3 songs on them, song files, can be played on most recent car players and home DVD players. And then more of the modern cars now have USB connectors. Actually, I had a 2008 Ford Taurus that had that, so they've been around for a while now, which allow you to put a flash drive in your car and play it through the sound system in your vehicle. Then we moved on to digital downloads. This was what really was replacing compact discs. So Nielsen and Billboard say digital music purchases for the first time in 2011 accounted for more than 50% of music sales. So CDs were, continuing to decline. For several years, the digital sales increased each year while physical CD albums continued to decline. Stores like the iTunes stores, Amazon Music, and others flourished because they now are replacing the brick and mortar record stores. And what were the benefit of a digital download? Well, they were much more economical because you only paid for the songs you want. You had the ability usually to listen to about 30 seconds of a song. And most of us can think back over the years and know, there were 2 or 3 songs we really liked and we bought the LP and maybe the other 10 were not so good. As I said, you can listen to a 30-second clip of the song, and this was a great way for new artists to showcase their work without the need for a full album. Amazon had a deal going where if you purchased a CD and they were going to mail it to you, in the meantime, they immediately gave you a code to download the songs as MP3s to your computer immediately, so you didn't even have to wait for the CD to arrive in the mail. Okay, music in the clouds. There are several cloud music services. I'll mention a few in a minute. But the benefits of having a cloud music service, you have millions of songs to choose from. And some of them allow you to upload your music collection to the cloud, although they have limitations. And some of them are getting away from that now. iTunes for a while matched a song. So if you uploaded a song from your collection that was a lower quality and they had that same song, they would actually replace your song in your account with one of a much higher quality. and then you had all the music that you enjoyed available on a number of devices. Usually they'd limit it to 5, so you weren't doing this for every friend and neighbor in town. Are there any disadvantages to a cloud music service? Well, the process to move your music to the cloud can be labor intensive depending on your upload speed and the size of your music collection. And then you really need an internet connection to listen to your music. So when you rent the music, and that's what I like to call it when you're getting your music from an online streaming service, most of them provide 2 levels. The one is free with ads. So where you choose the genre and the artist you like, and the service chooses what songs to play, and then you're limited with how many you can skip each hour. And then I think what most people opt for is a subscription, and they vary, but most of them are about $10 a month. And here's where you have access, and you can pick and choose the songs that you want to hear, creating your own playlists, etc. And then online music stores are still there. The ability to purchase and download the music to save on your computers and other devices. You pay for the songs anywhere from 99 cents each to $1.99, depending what store you're using. Not all stores offer the highest quality, and none offer all the music ever recorded. What do I mean by that? I have several LP albums that were never digitized. They're only available as vinyl LPs. So if the music was not digitized, then chances are it's not available to stream or download. So if you wanted to know what the best music streaming services are, check out this CNET article. Just type in your search box on the computer, best music streaming services for 2020. And this is a really good in-depth review of all these music streaming services. These are some of the top ones that they mention. Amazon Prime Music is really best because if you're already an Amazon Prime member, then this is a benefit of that membership. Now they offer 2 types. The Amazon Prime Music has about a 2 million song catalog, which should be enough for most people. But if you want to pay for their fee-based service, that's called Amazon Music Unlimited, and that has over 50 million song catalog. Apple is best for those committed to the Apple ecosystem. Now, iTunes has actually been retired, and it's been replaced by the new Apple Music, along with some sister apps for TV and podcasts. My thinking here is iTunes was being used for so many things that had nothing to do with music. So that was the right time to change it and separate it into the Apple Music app. Google Play is being retired also this year. Google Play Music, which has been the player on the Android smartphones, and that's being replaced by what's called YouTube Music. Of course, Google owns YouTube, and that's geared to those really who also enjoy watching music videos, as I do. Spotify is the largest music streaming service. They're headquartered in Sweden, and they have a variety of different kinds of plans. One of the nicer ones is they offer a $15 a month for a family of up to 6 users. Pandora is another one, free service like others. You put in a favorite artist and you'll hear similar artists usually after the first 1 or 2 songs. And the Tidal is the last one I'll mention. That's a high-end audio version. They charge $20 a month. Their catalog isn't as big as the others, though they have a lot of videos, but they really focus on the people who like hip hop and R&B. So, pros and cons of a music streaming service. Advantages, you can listen to who else recorded a favorite song. You can listen to other songs a favorite artist recorded. And it introduces new artists that otherwise you might never hear about. Access to millions and millions of recorded music songs. Disadvantages, free services have limitations. You always need an internet connection. Although this has changed recently, there's a new feature now that allows the download of music to the app for a limited time for offline listening. You cannot copy this music to your device. It just makes it available. So if you're going camping or someplace where there's no internet connection, you can, for a limited time, have the songs that you've downloaded on your device to listen to. Another disadvantage, if you're not using Wi-Fi, then this is going against your monthly data allotment. Who loves music streaming? By far, the biggest consumer this way is millennials. These younger music listeners have moved away from purchasing and collecting music media, meaning CDs and digital downloads. They are instead renting the music from these services, and they could create their own specialized playlists. They sort the music by genre, by tempo, artist, have so much more to listen to. And they don't have to worry about storage issues, about damaging a disc, about theft or somebody stealing their collection. So how do singers, composers, and others get paid from streaming? Well, the services like Spotify, Apple, Pandora, they receive income from two main sources. On the free account, they get their money from advertisers who pay the streaming service to interrupt the music you're listening to with ads. And then their other source of income is from a subscription account, usually the $10 a month monthly fee, so consumers can choose what they want to hear without interruption. Now, what does the music streaming service pay the artist and others who are entitled to a variety of different kinds of royalties? That's complicated and based on a variety of factors, but in general, I can tell you that in my research, Spotify pays artists, and I think that says 32 10,000ths of a cent per stream, which basically equals 1 cent for every 3 plays. I may have said that number wrong before. So let's keep it at 1 cent for every 3 plays. And you're going to say, well, that's not much, is it? Well, let me show you on this next chart what Spotify paid the artist as of March 2020. So when you consider how many people are actually playing the songs, and most of these, of course, I've never heard of, but there's Justin Bieber at the top. And just for that one song, he made $835,000. So any of the artists who are saying they think they're getting gypped with this, I don't think so. So to stream or not to stream, that is the question. And this is my opinion. You should consider streaming if you don't have a large collection of music, but would like to have access to it. You enjoy discovering new artists today and their music. And maybe you're considering downsizing and no longer want to have the responsibility or maintenance of storing a large collection of vinyl or CDs. And you listen to music every day and really would like to have it available using today's technology. But you don't need to stream if you don't have an interest in today's new artists and the various pop music offerings, if listening to music is not an important aspect of your daily life, or maybe you're like me. You've been collecting music for decades and already own all the music you ever want to hear. You know, that being the case, as I said earlier, just rip it to your computer and then to portable devices and you're good to go. So here's a couple of music apps that'd be worthwhile if you listen to music to download to your smartphone. SoundHound or Shazam. So you ever hear of a song playing, but you can't recall the name of the artist? Well, with these apps on your phone, you just turn it on, let your phone listen to the song that's playing, and these apps will come back and give you things like the song title, the artist name, often the lyrics. It'll give you a link to a video if it's available on, say, a service like YouTube, and then it'll tell you what the other top songs from this artist are and even more information. And likewise, if you're looking for a music player for your Android smartphone. So I've had a Windows phone going back to the year 2000 up until earlier this year. And finally, I had to give it up. And so I got myself a Motorola Android phone. And now I wanted to look for what I thought was a good music player. And Music.ly is the one I ended up choosing. It's my music player of choice for the songs. Some of the features I like, its ability to search by voice. So I can talk to the phone and tell it what I'm looking for without me having to type anything in. It's free and there's no ads, no need for any internet access because it's playing the songs that are saved on my phone. So I think I have a 200 gig SD card in my phone. And so that way I'm able to carry around my favorite 40,000 songs at all time. Has nice other features, the tag editor, equalizers, headphone control. Music Olay. And then we have smart speakers for the phone. I bet most of you probably have either an Amazon Echo or Google Home or the Apple HomePod, ever increasing array of these voice activated smart speakers. And the best feature I like of them is a verbal request to not only ask questions, but usually to play songs. And then the software updates are continuing to make these more intelligent with more new skills. Amazon offers several styles, prices below $50. My personal favorite, and it's discontinued now to my dismay, but was the Amazon Tap, because it had a battery that made it portable around the house. You weren't confined to having to have it plugged in somewhere. And there's some users that use these high-end models as their main audio system at home. YouTube music videos. In the early days of rock and roll, national TV programs like American Bandstand and many of the weekly variety shows were the only way how viewers could watch their favorite music icons. Some of the times there were movies with people like Alan Freed, who was a notable DJ for actually coining the phrase rock and roll. He actually copyrighted that phrase. And in these movies, you could see the rock and roll stars of the day. Well, to my joy, various archives have kept all these clips and they've been uploaded to YouTube. And YouTube offers a music subscription service that is available, but most people watch the free music's videos and they're content with watching them with ads. But you can find sometimes current day concert footage when people used to actually be able to go to concerts in person, and from professionals or just people in the audience with their smartphone. Now, be careful. Here's my biggest complaint about the YouTube site. It can be habit forming. More than once, I've told my wife, Carol, I'll be coming to bed in a little while, and the next thing I know, I see the sun rising. Again, an article from some bullet points from CNET last year, talking about, and I won't go through all of this really, but how digital downloads that once ruled the industry, they now make less money because people have gone to streaming. Physical sales of vinyl records were actually up though, 7.9%. There's a somewhat of a comeback for vinyl, but streaming is still the way most people go, accounted for 75% of revenue last year. So can you still be considered a collector if you don't buy the music? Some people tell me yes. This is mostly the younger folks, because they say they use playlists, they organize their collection by genre, by artist, other different categories, just as someone who might physically own the media. And they take the same care, maybe more, with keeping the music organized. And with a playlist, they feel they have a collection of the music they care about. But no, and this is for me and most other people my age, probably say, no, you don't own the media as you do with CDs or vinyl records or even downloads. So if you don't own it, you can't consider it to be, you can't consider that you're a collector of it. And digital rights protections, you're not able to copy the music to a device. And here's my take. The word collector implies that you own something, while paying a monthly fee infers you are renting. All right, are LPs taking us back to the future? This is the most interesting statistic I found in my presentation. According to Rolling Stone magazine, this year, 2020, the sale of vinyl records will soon generate more annual income than compact discs for the first time since 1986. So back in the 80s, when we all thought, well, vinyl is on its way out, it's now actually come back to where it's making more, generating more income than CDs. And then vinyl sales earned over $224 million for the first 6 months of last year. But CD sales are continuing to decline 3 times as fast as vinyl sales are growing. But the reality check, remember that streaming is still the most popular way for people consuming music today, for over 80% of industry revenues. So are LPs taking us back to the future? So the newer LPs, if you buy them, and here's a Meghan Trainor album I bought a few years ago. It's not just a plain old black vinyl records. Now they're actually coming in different colors and the inside. So they are away to go. And you can have your cake and eat it too with today's modern turntables, because the newer ones usually have a switch on them. And if you have a newer receiver that doesn't have the old-fashioned phono connection that had a higher amplification, you can now plug in the normal RCA inputs, the red and white, to work with the newer receivers. And notice this one. This turntable actually has a USB connection coming out of the back. And you plug that into your computer as you're playing the record, and it'll record on your computer songs in real time as MP3 files. And in some of the newer record albums actually give you a code that you can download all the songs on the album immediately until you wait for it to arrive in the mail. Okay, we're going to do, I think, the next two. So let me stop sharing. So I'm going to go to the audio section of this. That's my wife Carol's music, and we were listening to Rod Stewart. But let's change that to, imagine I'm driving. I don't want to touch the monitor there, so I just press the button on the steering column.
Please say a command.
Play artist Garth Brooks.
Please say a line number or say none of those.
Line 1.
Playing artist Garth Brooks.
Comes up now. It started playing automatically. I didn't have to really touch anything. If I want to see what other songs are available for Garth Brooks, I tap the word browse. I could say these songs, but if I'm sitting watching, I could just scroll right down. Here's a song we all like, Shameless. And that quick, Shameless is playing. So I was talking to a friend recently who had a similar car, and I asked him if how he liked using the USB connectors, and he told me his car didn't have one. And I said, of course it does. We have the same model car. And he swore up and down. So we were at dinner. After dinner, I walked to his car. I opened up his console here, pointed to where the USB connection was, and his words were, "Oh my God, I've had this car for 2 years and I never knew I had that." So if anybody of you are out there who actually have the USB connection, it is so nice to just be able to rip your CDs to your computer and then save them to your flash drive, and then the computer in your car will do all the determining of what the song and title is and find it for you and play it with very little effort on your part. And then, Ken, I'm going to need you to play the next one as well.
Sorry, hang tight. Number 5, was it?
Correct.
Okay. Had to close and reopen a bunch of stuff.
Okay, so let's bring us to today's technology. I want to show you two apps that I think are really useful and you might enjoy. First one is called Discogs. Discogs, DISCOGS.com. And it's a database where you input the album information that you have. It can be an LP, it can be a CD, it could be a 45 RPM record. You put it in and it'll come back and keep it in your database with your name, but then it'll tell you. So here's an example. I have the Bob Dylan album Blood on the Tracks. It's telling me that it came out in 1975 on Columbia. A bad copy is $8, but a really good clean copy is $160, and the average price is about $20. So when I edit it, and I can give it some information as to what I think the condition is of either the media itself or the covers. I know I have 473 albums in it, and maybe about $3,000. So this gives you a wonderful way to determine what your any of your music media is worth these days. Now, there's a little more to that.
Sorry.
But if you can't get to it, that's all right.
It's locking up. Hold on.
Larger Windows Media Player just couldn't handle it. It was too large. It was constantly trying to update. MusicBee is a much better program. It has all my music. It's reading it from what's stored on this computer. I can just type in an artist's name over here. And as an example, I typed in Toby Keith before, and up comes all the different Toby Keith songs that I have in my database. And via Bluetooth, it's coming out of my main speakers and stereo unit in the loft here. So we've come quite a way from the 78 RPM record to today, and I just love it that I can have access to so much music and so many songs just with a few clicks on the keyboard. So another nice feature that you can add to when you're playing the song is to have the lyrics moving along with the song. I've never been a big lyric fan because I haven't focused on them, but when I can see them now appearing, then it makes it so much better. Okay, almost done. All right, good. So with all these format and various changes over the years, how many times could you buy, say, the same song like Elvis's Heartbreak Hotel? Well, if you're like me, you probably have it 78, 45, EP, LP, 8-track, cassette, compact disc, and downloading the MP3 file. Music business is smart. Today, you can buy this LP for $33 almost, called For Fans Only Audiophile Translucent 60th Anniversary.
Well, since my baby left me, well, I found a new place to dwell. Well, it's down at the end of Lonely Street, that Heartbreak Hotel where I'll be just so lonely, baby. Well, I'm so lonely. I'll be just so lonely, baby.
All right. I will try to answer any questions if anybody has them.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Yes.
That Victor machine that you showed earlier, the wooden box with, I have one that's almost identical to that. It's called Victor. And I also have a number of the original records that came with it. And it still works.
What kind of music was that?
Oh, well,
Name the artist?
the only one I can remember, and I don't remember the name of the tune, but it had the dance style on it, was a foxtrot. So
it's in the early days, as an example, sometimes I teach this in class, is that the song Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and the Comets, they would print on the record label suggested dance, and it said foxtrot.
Right. Well, this was before then.
Well, that would have been 1955.
Yeah, these were not vinyls. It was like you say, the old, very fragile record.
78 RPM.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, are you able to play them?
Oh yeah. You crank it.
Great.
You crank it. Yeah, it's got, like I say, it looks very, very similar to the one you showed in the picture.
Good, thank you. John?
What do you think is the big thing that why are vinyls coming back? Why are we going back to a breakable, big, not movable device?
Yeah, well, they're not really breakable, but everything else you said is true. And it has to do with audiophiles and just people's opinion, that there are many people who feel that there's a warmth, quote unquote, a warmth in the sound that comes out of an LP. And that's just personal opinion. You can ask this question. For me, as much as music I listen to, my most important criteria is convenience. Yes, the sound is important, but I want to have it convenient, whether I'm in my car, whether I'm out taking a hike, whatever, I can have that music with me. And with an LP, you're pretty much restricted to where it's plugged in. But it has to do with just personal opinion. There are some people that actually like the idea of getting up and walking over and turning the record over and cleaning it before they play it, etc. Just personal opinion. Fritz.
I have a 21-year-old granddaughter, and she's really getting into vinyl. And I'm surprised how expensive that stuff is. But anyway, I mentioned to her that in the basement, and it's been there for 30 years, untouched, is a TIAC reel-to-reel and a Pioneer turntable. My question would be, who has parts, because I'm sure all the rubber, the cap stands are deteriorated. I told her she could have that stuff, and she was excited. Is there anybody that maintains that stuff or repairs it or has a supply of parts?
I was asked this question at one time about the stylus and the needles. So the SHURE, the Shure company, SHURE, they've been around for, when I was a kid, they were making needles, and they're still around. It's an online store, of course, today, and you can put in it the model name and model number of the record player that you have, the phonograph, and they'll come back and tell you which needles work. And I think they have other parts too, like you said, the cap stands and any of the rubber that may have deteriorated. And I would bet in your area there's probably a small shop maybe that will do repairs on that. There's not a lot of them, but there's always one or two in almost every larger community.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Weldon.
Yeah, Fritz, good to see you. I've just gone through a portion of that. I have an old AR turntable, and the rubber, the platen is driven by rubber, and it had, I guess, one of the first times that they used the mass of the turntable to help stabilize the speed. But I was able to find a replacement drive band for that at a place called Vinyl Nirvana. I'm not sure how many of the products they support, but I think Pioneer is one of the turntables that they do support. And thank you very much, Ray. That's a very interesting presentation and timely for me. We just gotten rid of an enormous collection of LPs, kept a large number of them, some of which are being transferred to the software versions. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Weldon.
Back to John's thing about the vinyls coming back. You're very close. And what you said about opinion, I think you're dead on, because I read an article someplace about that, and they're actually, when they developed the LP or whatever, they said that there was no theoretical limit as to the bandwidth that you could get off of an LP. So theoretically, at least, they are as good as you can get if they're properly cut and everything. So, and I think that's why the autopilos like them, because they are as good as you can get. Of course, it depends on the player too. The turntable has to have good design too, but I think that's why they're sticking with that.
Yeah, very good point, Everett. It is based on the quality of your equipment. If you buy one of those $45 turntables, that's not going to give you that kind of great sound, no matter how good the disc is. So it's all the equipment, but it just really comes down to personal opinion. Here's what I tell people to do with MP3s as an example. Have a CD and make an MP3 out of it, and then have somebody else side by side, without telling you, play the CD and then play the MP3 of the same song, and see if you can tell the difference. I can't. Too many years of listening to loud rock and roll music has brought me to where I am today, so I can't tell the difference. But if you think there is a difference, try that test.
Yeah, I can still tell the difference. I'm a DJ, so I DJ. I'm a dance instructor too, so I can tell the difference. And all my I've got most of my stuff on my computer now, And I've got them on there in Windows Media. Let's see, Windows Media Audio. No.
Yeah, WMA, Windows Media Audio. That's similar to an MP3, although they say it's a little bit better.
No, it's not WMA. It's the other Windows Audio. Anyway, it's CD quality.
Okay.
They're large, around 35 megabytes per tune typically, but and I can tell a difference. So that's the way I play them.
Good. Yes, David.
Well, I think your question was probably answered earlier in your presentation, but you mentioned a very large capacity micro CD or micro SD disk that you have in your Android phone, as I recall.
I have an SD card in my Android phone. That's a 200 gigabyte SD card. So I've copied over, I don't know, I'd say 40,000. It might be a little less or more songs to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and just Android sometimes can be limiting on what it allows being stored on a external disk, storage disk. So apparently, then, from what you're saying, Android does allow music format files to be stored on the external disk.
Yeah, I'd really be complaining if they tried to limit it. It's my phone that I paid for, and it's my SD card that I put in it. I should be able to put as much as the card can hold. So, and again, I'm just now only entering the Android world, where I was a Windows phone user. I was the last person in my whole community up here to still be using a Windows phone as early as January of this year. And then finally the battery went, and you can't replace the batteries on newer phones. So I've entered the 21st century.
Okay.
Yes, Ken.
David, I want to answer that question a little more clearly. It depends, because Android is not all the same. Not all Android is created equal. Samsung has their own version. Google has the most pure version, so they claim. So sometimes the manufacturer will lock down what you can put on an external card. Sometimes they won't. So it depends.
Good. I didn't know that. Thank you. The phone I bought is a Motorola, the new G Power. So
Motorola is pretty much close to stock. At least they used to be. So I'm not surprised it works.
Well, this is something I can inquire about when the next time I buy a phone, which might be fairly soon. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, it was a real pleasure, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my passion with you today. And you're a great audience. Thank you.
I got one more question.
Sure. Go ahead.
What do you think of Hulu, the music side of it?
I don't use it. I've never used it, and so I only know of Hulu from the TV, from the streaming video. So they also offer a music app. I didn't know that.
Yes, our local library has a setup so borrowers can download, rent temporarily a particular group of music. I didn't think it was very extensive, but I haven't investigated it totally.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have any experience at all with that.
Thank you.
Okay, Kenneth and John, thank you again for letting me share this with your club today. And if there's nothing further, I'll say, for me, it's only 1:30 in Arizona, so I got still the rest of the day ahead of me.
We thank you for doing it.
Kenneth, it wouldn't have worked without your help today. Thank you again so much.
Yeah, I enjoyed the classics there, Elvis Presley and then the Beatles and way back, because I can remember that when I was in high school and in grade school, and that's all you heard back then. I remember I listened to a lot of it on the radio too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, we don't realize how much until we start thinking about all the different devices that we've used over the years. All righty. I will say goodbye and thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And I myself have to run, so if anyone needs to stick around, I can make someone else the host. Everett, how long do you need to stick around?
Well,
It's my
I
supper
don't-
time.
Well, if you want to end this presentation, give me a lead out and I'll stop the recording.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Ira?
Nope. No questions. I was just telling you I had to go eat supper.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Let's do this again in a month.
Sounds like a good plan. Okay. Yes.